It is my privilege to invite Father Lawrence De Silva, President of SIGNIS Karnataka, to come and take the dais to be the moderator for this session. Brother David is the General Servant of the Missionaries of Charity Brothers. The General Servant translates to Superior General in normal terms. His elevation to this post he's elevated to this post since December 2010. He became an MC brother in 1984, and since then he has been serving the society with great faithfulness. Can we put our hands together for Brother David, please?
Father Lawrence, fathers, sisters, brothers, and friends, the afternoon is not the best time to hear a kind of talk on a serious matter. So I started this small incident which, in my own life, I was a small boy in Calcutta in the 1960s when my father was posted here during the Indo-China War. And I was a small boy in St. Xavier's, and mother was to visit the school. And I was a small boy, 6 years old, and then he said, mother's coming to visit the school. And then I went to my mother and says, mother's coming to the school, and I need a few rupees for the leopards. And my mother couldn't understand this. What is mother connected with the leopards?
Is to give service.
And then she realized I was talking about Mother Teresa and the lepers. And so that early stage, I always thought of the lepers as leopards. That was my vocabulary in those days, in the 1960s. Now things have changed, and I've gone to this topic of Mother Teresa as a spiritual communicator. Mother was a spiritual communicator par excellence, as she walked the talk, as the expression goes. She was not known for any remarkable literary contribution, and her brief letters and short speeches were mainly on the experience of the love of God and her living out of this love in simple, practical ways. But the impact that she had on the lives of people came through the acts of love based on her faith and prayer. Her holiness touched the lives of people as they realized that it was not based on public gimmicks or mere words, but on actual living her life of love for the poor and the most needy. She lived the holiness in a down-to-earth manner, as she often said, holiness is not a luxury of a few, but the simple duty of each person. Mother began her day with prayer, ended the day with prayer, and filled the day with prayer. Much of this prayer was done in silence, for she believed that it was in the silence of her heart that God spoke to her, and she listened to him. But what was more obvious was the effect of her prayer in her own life and the transformation which it brought in others. People wondered how she found time to pray, being such a busy person with so many commitments and responsibilities. But as she often pointed out, it was her prayer that gave her the strength and the energy to do what she was doing. She often said, the fruit of silence is prayer, and the fruit of prayer is faith. and the fruit of faith is love. And the fruit of love is service, and the fruit of service is peace. So, as we consider mother's role as a spiritual communicator, it is essential to consider her holiness as the focal point of the rest that follows. Mother is being increasingly seen by people as a spiritually enlightened person who people would like to imitate and seek blessings from. The crowds of people who throng her tomb on her birthday or feast day, and the continuous flow of visitors who come to spend time at her tomb in prayer, is ample evidence of the spiritual influence that Mother has on people. She constantly reminded the members of the Missionaries of Charity that they were religious, engaged in works of love, and not social workers. And so their prayer and spiritual life was the priority. This has been the hallmark of the Missionaries of Charity and all its associates, the co-workers and others. Others' prayer and spiritual life has served as a model of what she said on holiness, and reiterates her view that she was merely a pencil in God's hands. He speaks and we listen. A second consideration in Mother's role as a spiritual communicator is the prophetic aspect of her work. She did not engage in inflammatory speeches or organize violent revolutions, but communicated through respect for human dignity and the instruments of compassion and love in action. We now see the world being invaded by consumerism and materialism, with mega culture and mass production ruling the roost. There is a growing divide between the wealth and the impoverished, the wealthy and the impoverished, and a lack of concern for human dignity revealed by labor exploitation, abortion, and female infanticide, child labor, and a host of other social evils. This has resulted in an upward spiral in the number of suicides, alcoholics, depressed persons, and victims of physical and psychiatric illnesses. The crime graph and the violence index has rocketed, and children have been forced to pay the price of this social upheaval. Mother, through a simple, frugal lifestyle and a compassionate, caring approach, has opened the eyes of the world and made people realize what really leads to happiness and peace. Her methods were simple and her ways were small, but the impact of it has been worldwide. Her service to mankind was based on the gospel understanding of charity taken from the Gospel of St. Matthew chapter 25. Whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, you do it to me. In other words, she saw the presence of God in each person she served, and that her simple actions of love were being done for God. The spiritual motivation of serving God in the distressing disguise of the poor pervaded all her work and touched the lives of those people she served. Her whole approach was person-centered and spiritually based, and this was clearly communicated through her actions. But what was prophetic was the values that she stood for and communicated through her service. While many countries operate for abortion and euthanasia towards solving poverty problems and improving the quality of life, it was Mother who spoke out in defense of life and opened homes for the dying destitute, Shishu Bhavans or homes for the children, Nirmal Hridayas or pure heart homes for the AIDS afflicted, Prem Dans or gifts of love homes for the Hansen disease, and the homes for the dying destitute. Now these homes have become spiritual havens for so many people, not only those who are served, but for also those who serve. Thousands of childless couples have become happy families with the adoption of babies who were discarded. So many babies who would have died through abortion or malnutrition have now become a blessing to families. But more than the physical and the social gains is the spiritual effect that working with these babies and children has had on the many volunteers and co-workers. In many developed countries, the mentally and physically challenged, or even those who are considered high risk, are being aborted or destroyed. But in reality, so many of these challenged children have contributed much to society. Also, many people who have loved and cared for them have found a purpose and meaning to their lives. Mother Teresa's pro-life words and actions against the culture of death, like "Let us fight abortion with adoption," and "Each man and woman is created by God to love and to be loved," found practical expression in her care for the last, the lowest, and the least. This has inspired so many people all over the world that now thousands of people are involved in caring for these children and people in our homes. Now many government organizations and NGOs have taken up this task. So Mother's words and actions have been prophetic and inspired many people to concrete actions of love. Mother Teresa's most effective means of spiritual communication was her service to the poorest of the poor in a simple way built on a total confidence in God's providence. Right from the time of her leaving Loreto Convent with 5 rupees till her demise in 1997, she never doubted it was God's work she was doing, and He would provide the means for carrying it out. Starting from the home in Kalighat to all the places where the Missionaries of Charity are now, approximately 850 centers in 138 countries, with about 5,500 sisters, brothers, and fathers, God's providence has never left her short. Even in the most complex of situations, where things seem impossible, Mother's faith never wavered, and her total trust in God showed results of God's providence. In the 1980s, there was a time when Lebanon was being bombed by the Israeli army, and there was a group of severely challenged children in a home that had been abandoned, and no one could cross the border to save them. Mother Teresa began to pray for a ceasefire so that she could cross the border. Right enough, on the right day, there was a ceasefire, and Mother was able to cross the border and save the children. On more than one occasion, Mother found that there was an emergency situation and there was no money or means for serving the poor. Yet, God was able to provide her with all that she needed for the care of these persons and children in very amazing ways. Mother often said, God, He does it all, we are nothing. And so He uses our nothingness to make His greatest known. So in conclusion, I would like to stress that God found in Mother an ideal instrument to communicate His word and love to the world. The profound spiritual influence that Mother had on people has transformed the lives of many distinguished people who were touched by her words and actions. For some people, it is hard to believe that a person such as Mother actually blessed our world with her presence and life. But I believe she still lives on into the lives of people who read books on her, live her kind of life, and share in her efforts to make God known and loved. Mother's holy life and her compassionate work, especially for the poorest of the poor all over the world, will remain a living testimony of how God used a simple, humble person to radiate His love and message to the ends of the earth. Thank you.
May I now invite Mr. Sugata Bose to please come and take his place on the dais. Mr. Bose is a very learned man, but a very humble man. He in fact told me, no need to introduce me. There's nothing to speak about me. But it is my duty and my privilege to invite him and to introduce him. He's an initiated devotee of the Ramakrishna Mutt and Mission. And he's also a great devotee of Mother Teresa. He was blessed by Mother Teresa in 1987. He remembers the exact date, 11th of November 1987. And he has kept in constant touch with her right until her death in 1997. He remembers very vividly that he has seen her in person 12 times, and 2 times as she lay in state in St. Thomas's Church. May I ask you to please welcome Mr. Sugata Bose.
Good afternoon, sisters, brothers, gentlemen, ladies, all associated directly or indirectly with the Missionaries of Charity, children of God. I am a very insignificant person in this galaxy of speakers and luminaries that abound in this room. Sister Lynn and I chanced to meet a year back, and she reposed, for her own mystical purposes, she reposed some faith in me that I might be able to speak on Mother Teresa. I'm not so sure. However, Mother has given me the courage, and I find it providential that before I took the days, Mother Teresa spoke to me of the film. I didn't expect it. Without much ado, let me say that rare in history comes a person of the luminosity of Mother Teresa. We are too close to Mother Teresa to realize her value. I'm too sure that even the Missionaries of Charity sisters don't quite realize who was, or is rather, Mother Teresa. I am before Abraham was. So, this presence of Mother Teresa is there with us. She was not a human being, nor are we human beings. We are children of God, and God is not a human being. So if we are children of God, we are divine. However, bound in flesh and blood, we quite forget our divinity so often. Mother Teresa didn't. And it is a very rare phenomenon. I use the word phenomenon, which Christopher Isherwood used about Ramakrishna at the beginning of his book. He was a phenomenon. A phenomenon, I needn't define. Mother Teresa remains a phenomenon. She will never be surpassed in history. She is a prototype of many, but she will be the original one. She is no Christ, nor is Christ Mother Teresa. She is no Ramakrishna, nor is Ramakrishna Mother Teresa. She is one of her own type. These are never repeated. Unique phenomenon. To me, she was love incarnate. And I don't mean this in figurative terms. Mother Teresa was asked once, if I recall correctly, that how do you love so many people? She said, very simple. Whenever I speak to any person, that person becomes the only person in the world. This actually taught me a lesson and taught me how to love. When she wrote in my book, Such a Vision of the Street on 11th November 1987, I had gone to meet her, and it was very strange, that when I said I have come to see you, and I gave her the book to sign, she said, why don't you go down immediately downstairs? Malcolm Muggeridge has come. I was astounded. I said, but I've come to see you, not Malcolm Muggeridge. No, you go down. He's there, many people are there. I was astounded at the humility of Mother Teresa, that she was completely unconscious of her greatness. And therein lies the seed, the plant, the tree, the orchard, the forest of greatness. That you are totally unconscious of your own greatness. That you're able to be an instrument in the hands of the divine. You see, the problem of this world, the problems are many. We have been hearing about problems, infanticide, euthanasia, and so many other things, abortion, etc. However, the solution is God. I am a teacher, and I'm often confronted by parents about problems. I only say, meditate. Meditate, take the name of God. Trust God, not your child. Trust God. You just pray to God, your child will be all right. Mother Teresa trusted God. She was completely unplanned in her ways. I don't need to teach the missionaries of charity about Mother Teresa. They have lived with her maybe for 30, 40 years. I've just barely seen her 12 times. But what I can say is that she came into the world, in this storm-tossed world, in this trouble-stricken world, she came to teach us love. We all love. A boy loves a girl. Lovers love each other. Everybody is trying to love everybody. But how unsuccessfully? Because we are selfish. Because we don't love the other person for the other person's sake. We love to get a return. The return is bound to come if you love properly. Truth in love is bound to give you the return. I am not a monk. I can't be a nun. I'm sorry. But I have learned how to love. The day she blessed me, I knew I had learned to love. So this love is the message. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on the streets of Nadia and Orissa, Puri, had, been maddened in love. He used to run down the staircase of the Jagannath temple, crying, Jagannath Swami Nayana Pathagami Bhavatu. And he used to fall into trance and seeing the beautiful image of Lord Jagannath. Sri Ramakrishna came in the 19th century, and he was again maddened in love. You see, these are prophets, seers, incarnations, great men, holy men, saints, sages, whatever you may call. But they are truly the salt of the earth. It is they who spice up our life, give us a motivation to live. Today I live. When I feel very frustrated, some years back I felt very frustrated one evening. And I was just rushing to the missionaries of charity like a madman. I was realizing Mother Teresa was not there. I could have gone to her. Midway I came back because Mother was not there, but her presence is there. I'm not very good a speaker. Verbose, maybe, grandiloquent in terms. Discount them. Mother Teresa was great, greatness, She is our mother. The night Mother Teresa died, I wept like a child, like never before, like never after. In fact, 6 days before Mother Teresa's death, Diana Spencer had died. That morning I was teaching, it was a Saturday. And I told my students, 2 of my students were there, I told them, you know, something devastating is going to happen today. I don't know what it is. Could be an earthquake. Lax might die. I don't know. Something devastating is going to happen because I'm completely losing my concentration, which I generally don't do. I'm naturally concentrated. And my mind is swimming. That night at 2 o'clock, we got the news. Diana Spencer had perished on the streets of Paris. 6 days later, Mother Teresa was gone. Initially, when I used to go to the Missionaries of Charity headquarters, I used to miss her very much. It seemed as if a great power had been taken away. Something like blood has been taken away from the body. I used to feel a tremendous vacuum there. Nowadays, when I go, I feel it is fuller than ever before. Mother has returned. She had temporarily withdrawn, but she has returned. There is a message of hope in Mother Teresa. She is our mother. She hasn't left us. She will never leave us. I asked Sister Anfrida, a missionary of charity, how do you look upon Mother? She said, she is our mother. I feel her presence. I said, what is the goal of your life? She said, to be holier and holier and holier, and to feel more and more the presence of Mother Teresa. I feel she's there with me. All the missionaries of charity have dedicated their lives. To quote Swami Vivekananda, every 500 years, a great soul arrives. And how do you know that person is very great? There are so many great souls, so many people posing as God, so many people posing as incarnations. How do you differentiate? Even Christ had told, beware of false prophets. How do you differentiate? You see, when a great wave arises, that wave makes men. Swamiji had said, man-making is my mission. Mother Teresa, so far as I recall the last time that I knew about it, had already made renounce 4,000 nuns. They have dedicated their lives to the upliftment of human society, oblivious of this motive though. The amount of love they give, irrespective of any status. Everywhere we see status being considered. I've never seen that being the case in Mother Teresa's. Never. The amount of love they give truly makes me wonder how it is possible that Mother's work is continuing like this despite her absence. How much must be the pangs they feel? How do they carry on such austere living, day in and day out, with a smile ahead and a blessing behind? I won't deliberate much. There are worthier speakers. I can only say it has been a moment crystallized in love for me today when I speak. Perhaps it will never come again. For the bicentenary, I will not be there unless in a newer incarnation to see. Good luck to all of you. Thank you. My prostrations to all the missionaries of charity and to everyone assembled here, for all of you are the children of God, and I am the least worthy amongst them. Thank you.
May I now invite Sister Nirmala Maria MC to come and take her place on the dais. Sister Nirmala is a qualified nurse. She came to India in 1979 as a Loreto nun, very much like Mother Teresa. In 1989, she became an MC sister. She has been caring for Mother Teresa right from her novice days. And this continued right until her last moments in 1997. So she's had the opportunity to see Mother up close and personal, especially when Mother was not available to the public for general viewing, or people could not interact with her. Sister Nirmala spent a lot of time caring for her. Sister Nirmala Maria has also traveled with Mother to places like Ireland, Rome, and a host of other places. She will tell you about her experiences as we go along. Can we please welcome Sister Nirmala?
All all the members of SIGNIS India, Reverend Fathers, brothers, sisters, participants of the 8th SIGNIS India National Assembly, honored guests and panelists. I wish to thank in particular Sunil Lucas for surprising me with an invitation to speak to the Assembly on our dearest mother as a spiritual communicator. In Rome in 1983, Mother fell from the bed and was rushed to the hospital. She had had her first heart attack. And it was in the hospital that she made a prayer or a meditation which is very familiar to all of us. It's called, "Who is Jesus to me?" A quote a little from it: "He is the hungry to be fed, the naked to be clothed, the leper to be cleansed, the light to be lit," etc. She ends up by saying that Jesus is my spouse, Jesus is my all in all. This thirst of Jesus completely pierced her heart. And it was from this moment that the birth of the Missionaries of Charity took place. Jesus is the perfect communicator of divine love. And it was this Jesus who penetrated her and filled her so utterly that when people looked up at her, they often recognized the divine. Yes, this was Mother's secret, that Jesus was so united with her and so one with her that he could shine through her, speak through her. When Mother was in hospital at that time, many people were asking, what sickness had Mother got? Then one doctor said, "I think Mother Teresa has got many sicknesses, but really there's only one real sickness she has, and that is Jesus sickness. And be careful because it's contagious." There was a book written by a Carthusian monk which is called "They Speak by Silences." And really, I could think that this is an apt way of my experience of Mother when I could see her wrapped in prayer in the chapel, or even when she is about her activities in the Mother House or even other places. There was always somebody, another person there with her. Another person was leading her. There was a lovely story somebody told me about these youth. They had seen the film of Something Beautiful for God, and they wanted to see if Mother Teresa was all that that film had shown. So they decided they'd visit one of the convents. Mother happened to be going out at that time. She had a rosary in her hand, one hand, the bag in the other hand, and she opened the door. And she said, "Yes, what can I do for you?" So the youth said to her, "We would like to see Mother Teresa." Now, not showing her identity, she said to them, "Well, you mightn't be able to see her now, but if you come back a little later in the evening, you may see her." And with that, she glided past them. As she was walking down the path, the youth were looking at her, and one boy said, "You know, there seems to be somebody directing her right foot to where it should go and her left foot where it should go. And that smile on her face and that rosary in her hand and the way she's moving along, I do believe we have really met the real Mother Teresa." And I think this is what we all experienced in her, that she was so full of the presence of God. In 1985, I had come to the Missionaries of Charity, and I got a great privilege of going. I was a Loreto nun at the time, and I got a privilege to go with her from Mother House to Dum Dum. As we were going along in the car, we came to the traffic lights. Then this motorbike came up alongside us. There was a girl there with a leather coat, a mini skirt to match, long dangling earrings, and hair piled up in a great hairdo. And we were saying the rosary together, and then I heard Mother suddenly chuckle. And she said, "You know, thank God we don't have to put up our hairdos before we come out," she said. Anyway, we continued the journey, and she was praying nicely, but I was surprised to see her head bobbing around, looking here, looking there, everywhere. And I was saying, well, she's not like nuns that put their head down and all this. So anyway, the next thing was we came to a traffic jam. And she even proceeded then to get the policeman to get us out of the traffic. She was telling one car, wait 1 minute. Another car, come, go. And the people were just looking at her, and she was, they were saying, oh, Mother Teresa, you know, they were smiling. And she just put up her hands with a big, delightful smile, waving and blessing everybody as she moved along. Now, what was she communicating? Maybe many things she was communicating. But for me, I think one of the biggest messages was that the Jesus whom she was praying to actually was the same Jesus she was meeting in the people all around her. And it was a very powerful message for me. Mother often spoke about being a pencil in God's hand. In 1992, she'd asked me to help her with her correspondence. And before I started, she said, you know, sister, you may be the only one who is going to give God's message of love to somebody you're writing to. So be sure that you mention God in your letter. Always put in a prayer or a little prayer card or a message for the people. Otherwise, you have wasted the paper, you've wasted the envelope, you've wasted the stamp, and above all, you've wasted your own time. It was a beautiful message I never forgot. Daily, Mother distributed so many miraculous medals to the hundreds that used to come to Mother House. And as a result, many miracles would take place, like prayers were answered for long-awaited pregnancies, for healings. And of course, people returned longing to give thanks to Mother for the graces that she had bestowed on them by giving the medal. But she was always, never pointed to herself, was never conscious of herself. She always said, you know, Our Lady is so wonderful, she's so powerful, that she put her whole direction on Our Lady. Many people would come with bouquets, garlands, things for Mother also. She would receive them graciously, and she'd always tell them, now go into our chapel, you give those bouquets, you give those garlands, yourself personally, you give them to Our Lady. This was her beautiful, and I was reminded very much when the last speaker was speaking about mothers not being conscious at all of herself. When I went with her to Ireland in 1993, we were in Dublin, and we were about to go to Our Lady of Knock Shrine. Now, it's a very big shrine in Ireland, the biggest one. And when people heard Mother was coming, they were coming from all over. So one of the sisters said, you know, in the paper today I saw 500 buses are going from Cork to Knock. And Mother, really completely unaware, she said, I wonder why they're all going to Knock, she said. And then I couldn't believe it myself. And after a few minutes, she said, oh, I know. Our Lady is there. That's why they're going. I couldn't believe. You know, really, she had no consciousness of herself at all. Beautiful. She had. Trying to lose a thing. As Brother David was also mentioning something of this, but one man came to the Mother House and he said, Mother, could I see your business card? And Mother said, I'm sorry, I don't have one. Then he said, can you give me some words? Then I will put them on a card for you, and then you can give it out. So the same words as Brother David had mentioned about silence is the fruit of prayer. I'm sure many of you know that one. And so Mother got it, and she was absolutely filled with joy. She said, this is a wonderful way of communicating God to others. And she said, yes, I've become a real businessman for the Lord, she said. She had really had a wonderful sense of humor. This is something that I appreciated most really in Mother, because it made her spirituality ring so true. She, we all know about her courage in speaking out against the evils of abortion, about the destruction of life in any form. One day, it has been in the film, I'm not too sure, but it impressed me a lot. The time she had this miserable-looking, half-dead little child in her hand, and looking at it, Suddenly the eyes began to light up and the lips smile, and she said, yes, this little one will live. It's still breathing. It's still breathing the breath of God. This is how she saw each one. They're breathing the breath of God. And that was what was the most important thing for her, that this life was so sacred because God's life was inside. Mother was constantly searching for the face of Jesus, and no occasion was really too insignificant. I remember when I was coming from Madras in 95 with her on the plane, she seemed to have a sense that some person wanted to speak to her. And she told me, sister, would you mind getting up from your seat? And sure enough, one lady came, sat down. You know, her sensitivity and her outreach, her compassion to Jesus and the various disguises of the poor. She was just able to, she'll go into a room, she'll see straight away the person who is the least wanted, the person who is most crying out for a little bit of love, a little bit of attention, and she'd be over straight to them, no matter who else was there. Another time in the hospital in Woodlands when I was with her, she was very sick that time, and there was strict orders given that nobody should, disturb her, and no visitors come, and very strict it was. And suddenly I saw one patient peeping in through a little opening in the curtain, longing to make contact with Mother. And suddenly she caught sight of her, and she got up in bed. Come, she said. And it was so beautiful to see that lady come in, and that tremendous joy that she would give. This is the little ways she was bringing Christ to others. Mother's greatest joy was to share her love of God with... Sorry, there's another part. Okay. Mother's greatest joy was to share her love and her work, and she had influenced the life of many, many people, especially our co-workers, volunteers, the doctors who she had known also. She had inspired them so much to reach out and to experience the joy of serving the poor. One of the greatest joy also was with the religious, those who were consecrated to God, priests and sisters. And I remember when I came to her in Mother House, she told me, she said, sister, I don't know about you, but she said, I can understand somehow that the almightiness of God, the greatness of God, the power of God, but she said, I cannot seem to understand the great humility of God, how he became like a little bread just to feed us and to be one with us. There was something, maybe Mother had this dark night, but she was a deep, deep contemplative person, and she was bringing this across without maybe even realizing it. In the hospital, she was always very, very keen and desirous to have the Blessed Sacrament with her, to have the crucifix with the eye thirst in front of her, her rosary close beside her. Her love was open and reaching out, and nothing closed her heart. Finally, seeing her in these later years, I was always amazed at her ease with the cameras. Even though tired and exhausted, even most likely she may have had darkness in her prayer, but she would make a tremendous effort to smile. One photo, one shot to get one soul out of purgatory. She had made that bargain with God. With the media also, I remember when Sister Nirmala was elected and there was a photo call. I can't forget how delightful and relaxed she was. She was simply bantering with the interviewers, asking them questions. They were like her little children, and they also were answering her back. Mother was a mother to all, and her closeness to God never failed to communicate his presence, his compassion, his love. A TV has many channels, but Mother had only one channel, the channel of God's love to the world. Thank you.
And finally, May I invite Father Alfred Huart to please come and take his place on the dais. Father Huart is a Jesuit priest and he was vice principal of St. Xavier's College. But that's not the reason he is here. He was the father confessor for Mother Teresa. And he's the first person to ever write on the dark night of Mother. And that is what he will be talking about in his deliberation.
Good afternoon to everybody. I wish first to thank the organizers of SIGNIS for doing me the great honor of coming to speak to you and to be with you and to speak to you. I don't think I need to establish that Mother was a great communicator and an outstanding spiritual communicator. If I had to name the two greatest Christian communicators, spiritual communicators of the 20th century, I would say Mother Teresa and John Paul II in very different ways. The depths, the range, the way she touched lives, the way she changed people, the sisters, the brothers, the poorest of the poor, the volunteer, those she encountered occasionally, those who have never met her but you heard about her and heard her message. So many people she touched so very deeply. Speaking from the heart has been mentioned so repeatedly. How is it possible that Mother could speak so powerfully, warmly from the heart when she told us that she was speaking from a heart that was completely empty, cold, and dark? It is now well known it was a very closely secret for Mother that night, very closely secret except to some of her spiritual directors. But now it has come out, you know, the book, Come Be My Life by Father Brian, the postulator of the cause of Mother Teresa. And where she reveals that for almost 50 years, she felt she could not pray. She doubted whether she had faith. She felt that God was not there. She felt that God was abandoning her, rejecting her. How is it that Mother could speak so warmly, convincingly, forcefully about God, about Jesus in the poor, and so on? Mother Teresa herself was aware of the paradox. I was never the spiritual director of Mother Teresa. I was quite friendly with her because I was going weekly to Mother House for almost 15 years as a confessor of the senior sisters and giving talks. But I gave twice a retreat in Mother House to the sisters and to Mother Teresa herself in 1965 and in 1985. Now, in 1965, Mother, as is done during an 8-day retreat, came to speak to me and told me somewhat at length about the night in which she was plunged. Now, she told me then something I remember very well, which I think is important for you communicators. It is that she knew aware of the problem. She said, Father, I realize that when I speak to the sisters, to the volunteers, to people, when I speak about God, when I speak about Jesus, when I speak about Jesus and the poor, I realize very well that it goes through. They are touched, they are moved. But inside, Father, it is all blank. Now, how is it that the period of darkness of Mother Teresa went for almost 50 years from, she said, more or less from the time when she began the work of the Missionaries of Charity. How is it, and it was lasted probably until her death. How is it that Mother Teresa could find the strength, the energy the power to communicate God, Jesus, the poor, so powerfully to people. There has been several, when the closely secret of her darkness was revealed, there was surprise, complete surprise by even people who were very close to her. Some sisters who were very close to her told me, I would never have guessed, because she was so joyful, so joy-giving. And when you saw at prayer, you so much felt that it was plunged in deep communication with God. You felt it when you looked at her. How is it? So some reactions had been secular-minded position. They said she was a hypocrite. She was an atheist, but she played the game of being a saint. Some people said she had a double personality, split personality. Some people said she was wearing a mask. That is not necessary to discuss that. But there are some people of very goodwill and sincere who say, how heroic that Mother Teresa, who was getting nothing from her prayer and from the Eucharist, could so, with such stupendous energy, dedicate himself to the poor. How heroic. I think that is sympathetic, that is nice, but it is wrong, I think. And I shall try to approach a little the mystery from outside. It's a mystery, you know. A little approach to the mystery. A little to say what happened, what was the thing. I think first a key to interpretation will be St. John of the Cross, who is the great doctor of mystical life. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to give a long lecture about the 7 mystical mansions of John of the Cross, but I will just say this, it comes down to this. When God sees a soul who is generous and open, he will, some of them, plunge them in the dark. It plunges in the dark. Now, for most of us, God speaks to us, represents himself to us using a good deal of imagination or sensitivity or human sensitivity or symbolic sense and so on. But at some times, and that in a way God gives a photo of himself, a nice photo of himself. But sometimes God will start giving himself. He gives himself to all of us, you know, but he will give himself more directly, deep people, bypassing the imagination, bypassing the mind, bypassing and so on. That is very painful, they say. That is anguishing. They feel God is abandoning them, He's rejecting them, and so on. Now, for John of the Cross, is that the truth? He said, no. God is communicating himself to that person more deeply. So he doesn't give a picture of himself to us. He gives himself at the deepest level. And the more superficial mind and imagination and so on are left unoccupied, and it's very anguishing and painful, and it is why those persons feel they are in the night. But in fact, it is because God is coming closer to us. That is the gist of what John of the Cross is told us. So where did Mother find that stupendous energy at the service of the poor, communicating the message of God, looking after the sisters, visiting them all over the place, in tremendous correspondence? How did she manage all that? Is it in spite of her darkness? No. It's not in spite of her darkness. It is she drew it from the dark communication of God in her. God can communicate himself equally well through light and through darkness. That is the message of John of the Cross. Right. Now, there is one point where the key, John of the Cross has given us a nice key to understand something. At one time, the key of John of the Cross does not work anymore. It is this, for John of the Cross, the dark night is a preparation. It's a preparation for the time when God will give himself fully to the whole of our humanity, and that there will be joy, perfect joy. Now, did it happen with Mother Teresa? No. Did it happen with the little Teresa? No. The little Teresa was in the dark night for the last almost 2 years of her life, until her death. And Mother Teresa was in the dark night, not for 1.5 years, but for almost half a century, till the time of her death. Now, therefore, for John of the Cross, the dark night is highly mystical, but it is a preparation. It's a purification. It's a purification. When the soul will be thoroughly purified, then God will flood the whole humanity with his joy and his bliss. Now, what happened to Mother Teresa and the little Teresa? Are they second-class mystics who will remain in the preparation and never cross the frontier too? I don't think so. There is, with the little Teresa and Mother Teresa, there is a new kind of mysticism which has become clearer. Thank you. Which has become clear. It is not only purifying dark night. It is participation dark night, sharing dark night. For Mother Teresa and for the little Teresa, it was sharing the passion of Christ. For Mother Teresa, she was the little Teresa of the face of Jesus in his passion. For Mother Teresa, it was the Sissio, the I thirst, the great cry of anguish of Jesus, not only of physical thirst, but of spiritual thirst, of feeling abandoned. Father, Father, why have you abandoned me? So it is a participation mysticism. And the participation mysticism is not a preparation for something else. It has got value in itself. So for Mother Teresa, her mysticism, which lasted for the whole second part of her life, was participation with the Passion of Christ. In all the chapels of Mother Teresa's sisters, you will find everywhere, I thirst. Something which went in very deeply from the time of her illumination till the end of her life. I thirst. Participation of the cry of Christ, of the abandonment of Christ. Secondly, for the little Teresa, it was participation of the darkness in which unbelievers found themselves. There was a good deal of atheism in France at the time, how much they live in the dark without knowing it. But for the mother, I think it was participation in the poor who are rejected and unwanted. That is the main thing for the poor. They are rejected, they are unwanted, you don't want to see them. You push them away from the center of the city because we don't want to see them. So it was participation in the rejection experienced by the poor and the rejected and those who are rejected. That Mother Teresa came to realize this and to accept her darkness, and even to say to one of our spiritual directors, I came to love my darkness. And to Bishop Curlin, a great friend of hers, she said, what a wonderful gift from God to be able to offer him this emptiness. I'm happy to have this gift to offer him. What a wonderful gift I can offer to God, my emptiness and my darkness. So, a summary, from where did Mother Teresa got her stupendous energy in so many directions? From the communication of God to her in her darkness, which she accepted. Has something to tell us, all this, something to tell us about for communicators? Yes, I think so. Communicators, is very good that we train ourselves in the skills, in the expertise, in the training to do good programs, whatever the variety. But if you want to be a spiritual communicator, the first thing most important is union with God. That is the most important. To be a spiritual communicator, first thing is union with God. And union with God, one of the very first sign of union of God very often is the compassion, the type of compassion which was in Mother's heart. So let us pray Mother Teresa, that he may make us communicators, effective communicators, spiritual communicators. In the dark or in the light, it doesn't matter. But he may communicate union with God and compassion. Thank you.
This is for Sister. We were really enriched by the sharing of all of you, and especially looking at the spiritual aspect of Mother Teresa, because we've been looking at her as a communicator, though a lot of spiritual aspect has been spoken about. But I want to ask Sister, if you don't mind, what made you to leave the Loreto Convent and join the Charities of Missionaries?
Hello? It was purely a love story of God, Father. I really can't. You know, it was going on so long, and it was certainly it was nothing I can really explain. For me, it was like an infusion that just God wanted me there. I was really happy in Loreto. I couldn't have been happier. And at the same time, when I joined and people were telling me, you know, you don't know the MCs, you've been so much near Mother. And I said, no, the way my story has happened, I said, if God had come down from the cross and taken me by the hand, it couldn't be more clear. I can't feel I would leave the MCs ever. And it's never changed to that day. And that's why I think that the experience was a reality, even though the Lord left me without an explanation. And I said to Mother, I said, I cannot explain to the superior, not the superior general, the vicar general, because the superior general was in coma. I cannot explain to them how this is. And she said, you never will be able to do it. She said, that is why it's a true vocation. You'll never be able to explain it. And they used to say, is it because of the poverty of the MCs? And I would say, no, not just for that. Is it for the work? No, not for that. I could not get. When I read canon law, when I was passing over, it was the nearest thing I could get to it. Even now I have forgotten what that is. But it was a very deep experience that went on over a number of years, has lasted, and I'm extremely happy with the MC. So more than that, I'm sorry, I can't say. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It is a rarest opportunity, I got it. Now, one doubt, that's not a doubt, it's a clarification. Now, Mother Teresa is known for her service, but she is also known for her contact and communication with the international leaders and media people. That is also one of the reasons the whole world has drawn an attention towards her. So now, my simple clarification is, as disciples, as sisters, one day you are doing the service, are you also following the same dynamism, contacting the international people, having the relationship with that kind of person, which is also a boost or a power for the church, not only that, for your organization also?
What God wants to do, He's doing. He puts the people coming our way. Actually, during the seminar, very much I am thinking, it is really, we owe so much to our poor people. It's our poor people, actually, who are giving us, if there's any interest or anything from outside, it's coming because of them. We are doing what God wants us to do, and when He wants to help the poor through us, He will do it through anything, either media or through, because the communication is not only through the big people. I mean, the beautiful communication and gifts that we're getting are even from small children, from everybody. So I hope that helps you. Thank you.